Yeah, hi, it's Keith from Philadelphia, USA. It's our first attempt into the US market. This is Joe, a fellow YouTuber. I'm going to ask you some advice, really, because we're new into the market.
Sure.
So, as a newcomer, we're well established in other countries, but as a newcomer into the US market, anything we should be aware of?
Well, I think the U.S. market really is just coming to maturity now, right? I mean, even just the idea of having a home backup battery is something that people, I think, are finally starting to consider as somewhat of a mainstream idea, not more of a kind of a fringe or a niche thing. I've been doing batteries here in the U.S. for about 12 years, and when we started, it was very much a small subset of the solar community. Even the solar community considered batteries sort of not really a practical thing for most users. Now, because we're losing net metering, and in some parts of the country we have an unreliable power grid, or we have electric rates that are increasing in price at a high rate of speed, now more people are starting to consider, well, maybe a home battery is something that I should look for. And what we've seen in the last year here, especially at the trade shows like this, I would say in the last year I've seen at least 24 new battery companies. And so one of the things that's challenging, I think, for consumers is figuring out which of these products are really serious contenders and which of these are just copycat, Me Too, generic clone batteries.
So, no, we see that in Europe, and you often see in the news where people have had issues, and I'm not going to mention anything because generally if you've got a quality product and established and you've got quality checks and everything's done correctly, then the product is reliable. And I notice in reading about in the US, people are now looking to mount the batteries outside, or is inside okay for batteries?
That's a good question. So you may have seen some headlines about battery fires. Very, very rare, but unfortunately got a lot of attention when they happen. And so a number of the U.S. municipalities are now requiring batteries to be placed outside, or if they're placed indoors, there have to be very, very strict safety requirements for how they can be placed. So a lot of the installers prefer to just have the batteries mounted outside now. It keeps the installation more clean, and I think for the homeowner there's a little bit of a safety factor, there's a higher comfort level in terms of safety.
So one of the things that's coming about a lot in Europe again, or particularly in the UK, where they have a MCS accreditation, they have different levels of installation, and one thing they look for is the battery manufacturer and the inverter manufacturer should be the same, rather than different manufacturers, because it saves a lot of problems in the future. Is that something that's coming about in the US?
Yes, we've actually seen this in a number of places that they're required to test each battery inverter combination as its own separate unit. And so this actually became very costly for a number of the battery or inverter manufacturers, because if they wanted to achieve the necessary certification, they basically had to test every possible combination of battery inverter out there. And so that's one of the things I think that's unique about your product, is you've actually taken it similar to the Tesla design and just integrated the storage and the inverter and everything into one appliance, so you don't have this issue.
So that's what we're trying to do, is to keep and also the internal switchgear, and because we've experienced in the past where people use different batteries or inverter, and then of course our inverters work fine with one battery and another battery doesn't. Of course the inverter gets the blame. It's not, and I say, well, hold on a second, it works with one battery, not another. Use our battery and it works. But and I get that, and I think in the UK, for example, that's something that they're trying to establish. And that. So no, I appreciate it. It's a short, I appreciate your help, and hopefully we'll be able to do lots of things in the future. And do a lot together, and I would very much like you to look at one of our products and look at it, take it apart, strip it down, evaluate it, tell us what we should be doing right, what we're doing wrong, everything else. One other question, sure, which is becoming very important in Europe, is the back office, the servers, because these things run on servers and the data streaming, and we have to run on secure servers. We have to run on European or US-based server. In the US, can you run a server anywhere, or would it have to be a secure non-Asian server, as an example?
Well, I know that a number of the inverter companies in the U.S. back office, a lot of the back-end systems are hosted on Chinese servers. Now, I think depending on where you're going to deploy these systems, there may be additional requirements of where the data needs to be hosted. But you said something earlier about interoperability between different batteries and inverters. I think one of the things that's also happening right now in the marketplace is there are some companies that are pushing towards integration on one platform or standardization on one platform, proprietary. And there are other manufacturers that are really pushing more of an open source or interoperability and open standards. So I liken this to the late 1990s. In the PC world, you had Apple and Microsoft, which were sort of the proprietary behemoths, and then you had the whole Linux and the open source community that was pushing for open standards and just make everything open and free and interoperable. I think the same thing is happening in solar right now, where some companies are philosophically invested in the idea of these components need to interoperate with each other. And then I think you have other companies, some of the larger brands saying, listen, it's going to be better for everybody if we just keep everything on one platform. That way there's one phone number to call, right? There's one warranty, but there's also more consistent user experience, right? There's one company to blame if the system doesn't work. So I think there's a little bit of that going on as well.
It's also the security. I think having the security, because the last thing is you want somebody, because I think energy is going to be like financial services. You're gonna, the more and more these systems are going to go out, the more control of the country can be taken from an external source. So these things are so important, and you can get so much data from them. So that's why we've actually, for example, in Germany, cannot use an Asian server. It has to be German-based or European-based by law. And some countries are starting to adopt this. In the UK, the same. They've just brought out new laws again. I'm reading about, I don't know fully, but I'm reading about US are looking at similar type of laws. I don't know yet, but I'm reading about things happening in the industry, which I think is good, because we've got security on lots and lots of things. And if you imagine having your banking services hosted the other side of the world, it's not going to be very clever if something goes down. But no, I really appreciate your help, and we are new into the market. We're not new into the industry. We've been trading since the 1990s, but we're new into the US market. And listen, Joe, I appreciate your help and everything, all the advice you're giving me. Thank you very much.
Thanks for
and
having me
hopefully
on.
We'll do lots more. Thank you.
Absolutely, and we'll be following your progress closely as the product becomes closer to available for sale here in the US. Of course, we'll want to make sure that we'll cover that, and really excited to see where you enter the market in terms of price, because I know you've got some things working to offer a really price competitive offering. So we'll see how this works out.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Thank you.
All right.